Grab yourself a pillow, make yourself comfortable, and allow the day to slowly drift away into the distance. Tonight, we travel somewhere calm, practical, and quietly fascinating into the story of a company that became part of daily life in homes all around the world. A company built not on loud luxury or dramatic glamour, but on bookshelves, lamps, wooden tables, soft blankets, and the curious magic of fitting an entire room into a flat cardboard box. This is the gentle story of IKEA and the long Scandinavian journey behind one of the most recognizable businesses on earth. Our story begins in the south of Sweden, in a region called Småland, a landscape known for forests, stones, lakes, and long winters. It is a place where nature can be beautiful, but also demanding. The soil is not especially generous. Farming has often required patience, resourcefulness, and a practical mindset. People in Småland became known for being careful with money, inventive with materials, and reluctant to waste anything useful. In many ways, long before IKEA existed, the cultural ingredients were already there, waiting quietly. In 1926, a boy named Ingvar Kamprad was born on a farm called Elmterred near the small village of Agunnaryd. Even the future company name would later borrow from these simple origins. IKEA stands for Ingvar Kamprad, Elmterred, Agunnaryd, a personal signature hidden in plain sight. As a child, Ingvar was curious about trade, perhaps more than most children his age. While many children focused only on games and school, he was already experimenting with tiny forms of commerce. He bought matches in bulk from Stockholm, then sold them individually at a small profit to neighbors. It was a simple idea, but a revealing one. Buy efficiently, distribute conveniently, earn through volume rather than excess margin. The foundations of a business philosophy were already quietly forming. Soon, matches were joined by other small goods: pens, pencils, wallets, picture frames, greeting cards, small practical items that people needed in everyday life. Nothing glamorous, nothing extravagant, just useful things made accessible. It is almost soothing to imagine this young boy traveling through the countryside, carrying small products, speaking to customers, learning habits of supply and demand in the most intimate possible way, by observation, by repetition, by routine. In 1943, at just 17 years old, Ingvar officially founded IKEA. At first, it was not a furniture company at all. It functioned more like a mail-order business. Customers browsed through catalogs, selected products, and ordered them remotely. This might feel ordinary now, but at the time, it was quietly innovative, especially in rural regions where access to city shops could be inconvenient. The catalog would eventually become one of IKEA's most iconic tools, almost as important as any chair or table it sold. There is something deeply nostalgic about the old IKEA catalog. Page after page of practical aspiration, rooms arranged with intention, soft lighting, organized shelves, neat kitchens, compact living solutions. It was not simply selling furniture. It was offering a vision of orderly domestic life, a quiet promise that perhaps your home too could feel a little calmer, a little more functional, a little more harmonious. In 1948, furniture entered the picture. Ingvar began offering locally produced furniture through the catalog: tables, chairs, desks, pieces that fit naturally into the existing mail-order model. Furniture was well suited to Småland sensibilities: practical, durable, useful, and necessary. But there was a challenge. Traditional furniture was often expensive, particularly for younger families or households with modest incomes. Ingvar saw an opportunity here, not to sell prestige, but accessibility. This would become one of IKEA's deepest ideas. Good design should not belong only to wealthy households. Beauty and function could coexist at lower prices if the system was designed intelligently. Around this time, competition grew tense. Established furniture retailers in Sweden were not always pleased by IKEA's low prices. Some suppliers faced pressure not to work with the young company. Barriers emerged, obstacles appeared, and what could have become a dead end instead became a catalyst for reinvention. Rather than retreat, IKEA adapted. This pattern would repeat again and again through its history, pressure leading not to collapse, but redesign. One of the most famous moments in IKEA lore arrived almost accidentally. In the 1950s, an employee reportedly removed the legs from a table so it would fit into a car more easily. Such a simple act, almost mundane, yet deeply consequential. Here was the seed of flat pack furniture, furniture designed to be disassembled, packed efficiently, transported economically, and assembled by the customer. It solved multiple problems at once: lower shipping costs, reduced storage space, easier transportation, less damage during delivery. This is perhaps one of the most elegant business ideas of the 20th century, not because it was flashy, but because it was beautifully systematic. Instead of optimizing only the product, IKEA optimized the entire journey of the product, from factory to warehouse to customer vehicle to living room. The customer became part of the final assembly process, not as exploitation exactly, but as collaboration within a carefully engineered economic system. And so, an unusual ritual entered millions of homes, opening a cardboard box, laying out wooden pieces on the floor, finding the tiny bag of screws, studying visual instructions, and slowly constructing something useful with your own hands. There is almost something meditative about it, an act halfway between shopping and participation. By 1958, IKEA opened its first full store in Älmhult, Sweden. This was not merely a retail location. It was a prototype for an entirely new shopping experience. Large showrooms allowed customers to see furniture in staged room settings: kitchens, bedrooms, offices, dining spaces, environments, rather than isolated objects. Instead of asking shoppers to imagine how an item might fit into their lives, IKEA gently showed them. Walking through the store became a kind of narrative experience, a quiet journey through possible versions of domestic life. The layout itself became legendary, a winding path guiding visitors through carefully sequenced departments: living rooms leading to bedrooms, bedrooms to bathrooms, bathrooms to kitchens, kitchens to storage, storage to checkout. Some people joke that entering IKEA feels like entering a maze, and in a sense, it does, but a highly intentional one. The path reduces decision fatigue, increases discovery, and encourages slow browsing. It is retail architecture designed around momentum and curiosity. Eventually, the experience expanded further. Cafeterias were introduced. Suddenly, a furniture trip was not only about furniture, it became an outing. Families could spend hours there, browsing, sitting, imagining, then pausing for Swedish meatballs, coffee, cinnamon buns, or salmon dishes. This integration of food was surprisingly clever, not simply because food creates revenue, though it does, but because it extends dwell time, lowers shopper fatigue, and makes the visit feel hospitable, less transactional, more leisurely. Swedish identity became part of the brand architecture as well. Blue and yellow colors echoed the Swedish flag. Product names drew from Scandinavian words and places. Store restaurants reinforced cultural associations. IKEA was not merely exporting furniture, it was exporting a softened, idealized version of Swedish everyday life: clean lines, practicality, simplicity, warmth, order. As expansion continued through Europe, then North America, then Asia and beyond, IKEA scaled not only products but systems. Logistics became central, perhaps even more central than furniture itself. Warehouses were engineered for extraordinary efficiency. Supply chains stretched globally. Packaging dimensions were analyzed obsessively. Material sourcing became a science of optimization. The genius of IKEA is often hidden behind its ordinary appearance. A bookshelf may look simple, but behind it lies an enormous choreography of design constraints, manufacturing negotiations, packaging calculations, freight economics, warehouse positioning, inventory algorithms, customer psychology, and retail choreography. Consider something as humble as a chair. To create one IKEA chair, designers may think not only about aesthetics and comfort, but also stackability, carton dimensions, pallet efficiency, raw material availability, price targets, labor considerations, recyclability, and assembly complexity. This systems thinking is one of IKEA's quiet superpowers. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything belongs to an ecosystem. Over decades, this discipline allowed IKEA to keep prices relatively low while maintaining massive scale. It also allowed for a peculiar emotional relationship with customers. People often feel they are making smart decisions at IKEA, sensible decisions, rational decisions. The brand is associated with practicality, with stretching a budget wisely, with building a home incrementally, one shelf, one lamp, one drawer organizer at a time. There is a modest dignity in that, not extravagance, but gradual improvement. Perhaps this is one reason IKEA resonates across generations. It often enters people's lives during transitional moments, moving into a first apartment, furnishing a dorm room, starting a shared home, welcoming a child, reorganizing after a relocation, building routines in unfamiliar spaces. IKEA is strangely intertwined with life logistics, the quiet architecture of becoming settled, and all of this began with a boy selling matches in rural Sweden, a child observing margins, convenience, and demand, slowly constructing not furniture at first, but a business logic, patient and cumulative, like assembling a table from many separate pieces, one screw at a time, one decision at a time, one system layered gently onto another, until eventually, almost without noticing, a global empire had formed from practicality itself. As IKEA continued to grow, the company did not simply open more stores, it refined a philosophy, a way of thinking about objects, space, and everyday life itself. This is perhaps one of the most interesting parts of the story, because IKEA was never only selling furniture, it was quietly shaping how millions of people imagined home organization, storage, comfort, and even identity. In many traditional furniture stores of the past, furniture was treated almost like a permanent declaration, large, expensive, formal, meant to last for decades, and often purchased only occasionally. A dining table might be seen as an heirloom, a sofa as a major life investment. There is beauty in that model, certainly, but also rigidity. IKEA introduced something more flexible, more modular, more adaptable to the realities of modern living, especially in cities where apartments could be smaller, budgets tighter, and lifestyles more fluid. Suddenly, a bookshelf did not have to symbolize permanence. It could simply solve a present need. A table could be affordable enough to replace eventually, a wardrobe compact enough for a temporary rental apartment, a desk simple enough for a student. The company became deeply aligned with modern mobility, the reality that many people move frequently, change jobs, relocate cities, begin new chapters, and need objects that cooperate with those transitions. There is something oddly comforting in this practicality, not demanding too much from the future, just making the present more functional. Product naming also became part of IKEA's identity. Instead of numerical product codes dominating the customer experience, items received memorable names, often drawn from Scandinavian geography, nature, professions, or simple Swedish vocabulary. A sofa was not merely item 4827-B. It might be called something melodic, something almost playful. This transformed shopping into a softer experience, easier to remember, easier to discuss, and subtly more personal. It also made the catalog and showroom feel less industrial, despite the immense industrial machinery operating behind the scenes. Of course, no story about IKEA is complete without speaking about design. The aesthetic associated with the company became globally influential. Clean lines, light woods, functional silhouettes, neutral palettes, compact efficiency. There is now an entire international visual language often described as Scandinavian design, though the term covers more than IKEA alone. Still, IKEA played a major role in popularizing this aesthetic at scale. It offered an appealing vision of domestic simplicity, uncluttered spaces, practical storage, gentle lighting, textiles that felt approachable rather than ornate. For many customers, buying IKEA was not only about affordability, it was about participating in a visual culture, a certain idea of calm, order, and understated taste. The influence spread far beyond the store itself. You can see traces of IKEA logic in apartments across continents, cube storage systems, minimalist shelving, modular wardrobes, compact kitchen solutions, collapsible tables, drawer organizers, rolling carts, shoe cabinets, stackable containers. The company quietly standardized many aspects of modern domestic organization, perhaps more than people realize. There is almost something anthropological about it, a multinational company helping shape how socks are stored, how books are displayed, how cutlery is divided, how closets are structured, how entryways are organized. These are small things, yet daily life is built from small things. Another interesting layer of IKEA's success is psychological. The famous concept, sometimes called the IKEA effect, refers to a tendency for people to value objects more highly when they participate in building them. It makes intuitive sense. When you spend time assembling a desk, aligning dowels, tightening screws, interpreting diagrams, the finished object can feel slightly more meaningful. You did not merely purchase it, you completed it. Some frustration may occur during assembly, certainly, but completion often brings a quiet satisfaction, a small sense of authorship. This phenomenon is fascinating because it transforms consumption into mild co-creation, and mild co-creation often deepens attachment. Meanwhile, IKEA continued expanding internationally. Store openings became major events in some regions. Long lines formed, excitement spread, customers arrived with lists, floor plans, renovation dreams, and practical ambitions. The company adapted to different markets while preserving its core identity. A store in Germany, Canada, China, or Australia might reflect local adjustments, but still feel recognizably IKEA. This consistency is not accidental. It is carefully managed brand architecture. Even walking into an IKEA store can feel oddly familiar, regardless of country. The scent of food nearby, the escalators, the room displays, the warehouse aisles stacked high with flat packages, the pencil stations, measuring tapes, yellow shopping bags, all of it forms a ritualized environment. One of the company's most clever innovations is the separation between inspiration and logistics. First, customers wander through beautifully arranged showrooms, imagining possibilities, visualizing future rooms, comparing layouts, testing cushions, opening drawers. Then later, after desire has been gently cultivated, they enter the warehouse section, a realm of shelves, product codes, pallets, trolleys. Here the dream becomes operational. You locate aisle and bin numbers, retrieve your boxes, and physically collect the components of your future furniture. This transition is subtle but powerful, from aspiration to execution, from imagination to logistics. Few retailers combine these emotional and operational phases so seamlessly. And then, of course, comes checkout, and finally, the journey home, often involving a car trunk, careful spatial reasoning, and perhaps the satisfying sensation of successfully fitting improbable dimensions into limited vehicle space. In some ways, the IKEA customer experience is almost a mini project. You plan, browse, select, transport, assemble, organize, complete. It is commerce, structured as a manageable sequence of tasks, which may partly explain its enduring appeal. Humans often enjoy systems when systems feel navigable. IKEA gives shape to the process of improving one's living environment. Ingvar Kamprad himself remained a fascinating figure throughout much of this growth. Despite building an enormous global company, he became associated with frugality, sometimes almost to a legendary degree. Stories circulated about him flying economy class, driving modest cars, reusing tea bags, preferring practical spending habits. Whether every anecdote was perfectly representative is less important than the symbolic message. The founder embodied thrift, restraint, and cost consciousness. This aligned beautifully with the brand itself. A company promising affordability was led by a man publicly associated with modest habits. It reinforced authenticity. Over time, the company's ownership structure also became famously complex. Foundations, holding entities, intellectual property arrangements, international corporate architecture, all designed partly for stability. taxation considerations, governance continuity, and long-term independence. These structures are not especially romantic, perhaps, but they reveal another dimension of IKEA's thinking: durability, not only in products, but institutions. The business was built to endure, to remain resilient beyond a single generation. This is a recurring theme in enduring companies. They design not only for immediate growth, but continuity. For all its strengths, IKEA has also faced criticism and challenges over the years. Like any global enterprise of massive scale, questions have arisen around sourcing, labor conditions in parts of supply chains, sustainability practices, forestry impact, material use, and global manufacturing ethics. These are significant topics, and IKEA has spent years increasing public commitments toward renewable materials, circular design, energy efficiency, recycling initiatives, and climate-related goals. Whether any large company can fully resolve the tensions of global consumption is a complicated question, but IKEA has increasingly positioned itself within conversations about sustainable living, selling not only furniture but energy-saving products, efficient appliances, storage systems for waste sorting, and even solar-related offerings. In some markets, this evolution reflects changing customer expectations. Businesses do not operate in static cultural environments. They adapt alongside public concerns. Yet even amid these modern complexities, something about IKEA remains charmingly grounded. At its heart, it is still a company deeply concerned with ordinary life. Where do you place your books, your plates, your winter coats, your children's toys, your cables, your towels, your plants, your shoes, your paperwork, your blankets? The problems it addresses are humble, persistent, universal. In a world often obsessed with spectacle, there is something almost relaxing about a business built around storage boxes, lampshades, curtain rods, and practical shelves. Consider the emotional role of organization. A well-placed shelf can reduce visual clutter. A drawer divider can create order. A bedside lamp can soften a room. A desk can enable work. A dining table can host conversation. Furniture is by the late 20th century, IKEA had become far more than a Swedish retailer. It had become a global habit, a destination woven into the routines of millions of households. Yet what is especially interesting is how the company scaled while preserving a strangely personal feeling. Despite operating at enormous size, this balance is not easy. Many companies become less human as they expand, more abstract, more distant, more corporate in texture. But IKEA found ways to remain connected to ordinary domestic concerns, perhaps because its products never drifted too far from basic human needs: sleeping, eating, storing, organizing, lighting, sitting, resting, gathering. There is something universal about these categories, and perhaps that universality made translation across cultures easier. A bed frame is needed almost everywhere. So is a table, a lamp, a cabinet, a shelf. Yet cultural adaptation still mattered, and IKEA gradually learned to localize details without abandoning its overall philosophy. In some markets, mattress sizes had to be adjusted, kitchen designs modified, wardrobes resized, product assortments altered to reflect local habits, home dimensions, and family structures. A company selling into homes must understand homes differ subtly around the world. In parts of Asia, for example, urban living spaces may be more compact, requiring highly efficient storage and multifunctional furniture. In other markets, customer expectations around color palettes, dining habits, or bedroom arrangements may vary. This made IKEA not only a retailer, but an observer of domestic anthropology, quietly studying how humans arrange life. The famous showroom model supported this beautifully. Each room display could function almost like a tiny ethnographic scene, a stylized interpretation of how life might unfold within a certain square footage: a studio apartment, a family kitchen, a children's bedroom, a home office corner. There is something quietly theatrical about these spaces, frozen scenes awaiting projection, Customers step into them and imagine, perhaps my mornings could feel like this. Perhaps my entryway could become more orderly. Perhaps this awkward corner could finally become useful. Retail at its best often sells possibility rather than mere inventory, and IKEA became masterful at this. The rise of urban living only strengthened the company's relevance. As cities grew denser and housing costs increased in many regions, efficient furnishing became more valuable. The problem was no longer simply buying furniture, but maximizing function within limited space. Here, IKEA's strengths aligned almost perfectly with broader economic realities. Underbed storage, folding tables, narrow shelving, modular systems, stackable units, hidden compartments, compact desks. These were not merely convenient, they were increasingly necessary. The company was effectively designing for constraint, and constraint often produces cleverness. It is oddly satisfying to think about a global empire partly built on solving the geometry of small apartments. In parallel, IKEA became deeply invested in design process itself. Products were often developed through collaboration between designers, engineers, manufacturers, and cost planners. The price target could even precede the object, rather than designing first and pricing later. Teams might begin by asking what kind of product could be delivered at a specific, accessible price point. This reverses traditional assumptions. Design is not isolated from economics. It is integrated with them from the beginning. Such discipline requires creativity of a particular kind, not unlimited expression, but constrained problem solving. How to create something functional, visually pleasing, durable enough, and economically efficient all at once. There is elegance in that challenge. Consider the humble Billy bookcase, perhaps one of IKEA's most famous products. Simple, modular, widely recognizable, and present in homes around the world. It is not luxurious, nor intended to be, yet it has become almost iconic precisely because of its utility. Books, objects, files, decorations, plants, photographs, all can find temporary or long-term residence upon its shelves. It quietly serves, and has done so for decades. Few objects illustrate IKEA's philosophy so clearly. Accessible function at scale. Another fascinating layer of IKEA's story is its relationship with self-service. The warehouse model asks customers to participate more actively than traditional retail once did. You locate the item, note its code, retrieve it, transport it, assemble it. This could be framed as labor shifted onto the customer, and in some sense it is, but crucially, it is presented as empowering rather than burdensome. The customer retains agency, control, and price advantage. There is satisfaction in navigating the process successfully, almost like completing a manageable logistical puzzle. In this way, IKEA aligns with a broader modern preference for autonomy. Many people enjoy feeling capable, especially in domains of home improvement, carrying boxes, assembling furniture, reorganizing rooms. These acts can create a subtle sense of competence, perhaps even renewal. A room changes, therefore life feels slightly reorganized too. The emotional relationship between space and mood is profound, and furniture companies operate directly inside that relationship. During the digital era, IKEA also faced new pressures. E-commerce transformed customer expectations across retail sectors. Suddenly, convenience meant home delivery, digital browsing, rapid comparison, algorithmic recommendations, and online reviews. The classic in-store pilgrimage remained powerful, but no longer sufficient on its own. IKEA had to evolve. Digital catalogs emerged, websites improved, planning tools expanded, online ordering infrastructure grew more important. This transition was not trivial, because IKEA's model had been built partly around physical immersion, the showroom journey, the warehouse retrieval, the cafeteria break. Translating such an experience into digital space required thoughtful adaptation. Yet adaptation has always been one of the company's strengths, not by abandoning identity, but by reconfiguring systems. The catalog itself, once such a central artifact, also underwent transformation. For many years, the IKEA catalog was among the most widely distributed printed materials in the world. arriving in mailboxes with remarkable regularity. It became a ritual object in many households, browsed casually on sofas, annotated with ideas, dog-eared for future reference, a source of low-stakes domestic inspiration. The eventual discontinuation of the printed catalog marked the end of an era, and for some, a surprisingly emotional one. It was more than a shopping guide. It had become part of seasonal rhythm, another reminder that business artifacts can acquire sentimental life. IKEA also expanded into adjacent categories over time: textiles, kitchenware, lighting, rugs, bathroom accessories, storage containers, artificial plants, children's toys, food products, and more. This ecosystem approach increased both convenience and immersion. A customer could furnish not merely a room, but much of an entire household environment. This is strategically powerful. Once a brand becomes associated with home itself, the relationship deepens. You do not only buy from the company, you inhabit its ecosystem. Yet perhaps what remains most interesting is how emotionally neutral many IKEA products are by design, not in a cold sense, but in an accommodating one. They often serve as frameworks rather than declarations. A simple white shelf does not dominate a personality, it supports one. A neutral sofa can adapt to many aesthetic directions. This flexibility broadens appeal. Customers can personalize around the base structure, making the products feel compatible with evolving tastes. In this sense, IKEA often sells infrastructure for personal expression rather than finished identity. The stores themselves continued evolving too. New formats emerged: urban concepts, planning studios, delivery innovations, sustainability experiments, circular resale initiatives, and repair-oriented ideas all became more relevant. The question was no longer simply how to sell more furniture, but how to remain useful within changing economic and ecological realities. Furniture ownership patterns are shifting, housing is changing, urban density fluctuates, environmental awareness increases. Companies must remain dynamic or risk irrelevance. IKEA seems acutely aware of this. Still, despite technological change and corporate evolution, the emotional core remains remarkably stable. A person entered as IKEA moved deeper into the 21st century. The company entered a phase where its greatest challenge was no longer expansion alone, but relevance in a rapidly changing world. A world shaped by climate awareness, digital transformation, shifting housing patterns, and evolving expectations around consumption itself. The question was no longer simply how to furnish homes affordably, but how to do so responsibly, sustainably, and in a way that could still feel emotionally and economically accessible. IKEA began to increasingly frame itself not only as a furniture company, but as part of a broader conversation about everyday living systems, energy use, waste reduction, and circular design. The idea of circularity became especially important. Instead of a straight line from production to disposal, products could be designed for reuse, repair, recycling, and longer life cycles. Furniture was no longer just an endpoint, but part of an ongoing material loop. This shift required rethinking materials themselves: wood sourcing practices, packaging reductions, renewable energy investments, and product durability strategies. Even something as simple as a table or chair began to carry hidden environmental considerations embedded within its design process. Where does the wood come from? How long will it last? Can it be disassembled? Can it be recycled at end of life? These questions increasingly shaped decisions behind the scenes. At the same time, IKEA explored resale and second life programs in various markets, allowing customers to return used furniture for refurbishment or resale. This introduced a quieter philosophy into retail, that ownership could be more fluid and products could pass through multiple households over time, extending their usefulness beyond a single purchase moment. It is a subtle but meaningful shift in how we think about objects, not as permanent possessions, but as shared resources, moving through cycles of care alongside sustainability efforts. IKEA also faced the broader challenge of digital native consumer behavior. Younger generations increasingly expect seamless online experiences, fast delivery options, and integrated digital tools for planning spaces. IKEA responded with design apps, augmented reality previews, online room planners, and expanded e-commerce infrastructure. These tools allow customers to visualize furniture in their own spaces before buying, bridging imagination and physical reality in new ways. Still, the physical store experience remains important because IKEA is not just about products, but about spatial storytelling, walking through environments, feeling scale, and encountering ideas in real space. There is something difficult to replicate digitally about the slow movement through showroom pathways, the gentle sequence of rooms, the tactile experience of materials, the soft lighting of staged living spaces. Even as technology advances, this physical journey retains emotional weight for many visitors. Another ongoing dimension of IKEA's evolution is its approach to affordability in a changing global economy. Inflation, supply chain fluctuations, and material costs constantly challenge the balance between low prices and quality standards. Maintaining accessibility while managing these pressures requires continuous optimization, not a one-time solution. This is where IKEA's systems thinking remains crucial. Every product is still evaluated, not only for design, but for cost structure, manufacturing efficiency, transport optimization, and packaging intelligence. The flat pack concept continues to play a central role here, reducing shipping volume, lowering storage costs, and enabling global distribution at scale. It is one of those ideas that remains quietly powerful decades later, not because it is new, but because it is structurally efficient. Meanwhile, IKEA's cultural presence has become almost independent of its retail footprint. It appears in apartments, student housing, temporary homes, shared spaces, and long-term residences across continents. Often, people encounter IKEA products at multiple life stages: first apartments, university dorms, early career moves, family homes, relocations, downsizing later in life. The furniture becomes part of life transitions, almost like a background companion to change, rarely the focus, but often present. In a sense, IKEA has become embedded in the emotional geography of moving, packing boxes, unpacking rooms, rebuilding order after disruption. There is a quiet continuity in that. Even as life changes, shelves still need assembling, lamps still need placing, drawers still need organizing, and rooms still need shaping. The company's founder, Ingvar Kamprad, passed away in 2018, marking the end of an era in a very literal sense. Yet the system he helped design continues operating, largely independent of any single individual. This is one of the most interesting aspects of large, enduring companies. They become structures that outlive their creators, guided by principles, processes, and institutional memory, rather than personal direction alone. Kamprad's legacy is often described less in terms of wealth or spectacle, and more in terms of organizational philosophy, simplicity, cost consciousness, accessibility, and long-term thinking. Whether one agrees with every aspect of that legacy or not, it undeniably shaped one of the most recognizable business systems in the modern world. Today, IKEA operates across dozens of countries, with hundreds of stores, supply chains spanning continents, and millions of daily interactions between people and products. Yet despite this scale, the core interaction remains surprisingly simple: a person choosing something for their home, something to sit on, sleep on, store things in, or illuminate a room. It is a reminder that even vast global enterprises can ultimately revolve around very ordinary human needs: comfort, function, and belonging within a space. There is also a gentle irony in IKEA's global identity. It represents both modern industrial efficiency and domestic intimacy at the same time. It is a multinational system, and yet it often appears in the most private spaces of life: bedrooms, kitchens, living rooms, places where people rest, think, talk, and simply exist. Few businesses occupy that intersection so consistently. As we reflect on this story, it becomes clear that IKEA's journey is not one of sudden breakthroughs or dramatic turning points alone, but of gradual layering, decisions accumulated over decades, systems refined repeatedly, ideas tested at scale, adjusted, and improved. The flat pack box, the showroom path, the warehouse retrieval system, the catalog culture, the pricing philosophy, the design construction.